Okay, this is Saxon 8-7, lesson 77. Good morning. Hope everybody is doing well. So if you remember from a couple lessons ago, we practiced fractional part problems that involve fractions and decimals. So now we're just stepping it up a little bit, and we're trying to find out the percent part, and then sometimes mixing it up again. The main thing that you're going to be doing is setting it up like an equation, like we've shown in the last couple of lessons, and just following that format. So here's our first problem, our first example, and that is what percent of 40 is 25? And you do the same thing that we've done before, is we translate. We translate from English to math. And we know that what percent, or we don't know, this is new, we do the W for what, and then we're going to put a P for percent. We know that of is times, we have 40, is equals, and 25. So now we have an equation that looks very familiar, and we solve it like we would do before, like we've done in the past. We have times. To do the opposite is to solve it, and that would be to divide by 40. Remember, we want to get that by itself, and so we want to get rid of anything that's on the other side of the equal sign, which would be 40. So that crosses out. We're left with what percent, and then here's our problem. And you know me, I like to reduce, so let's go ahead and reduce that. We know that 5 will go into both 25 and 40, so that reduces 25 divided by 5 is 5, 40 divided by 5 is 8. So we have the fraction 5/8. So that would be nice and lovely if this was what F, what fraction part that is, but we are looking for what percent, so we need to change 5/8 into a percent. Well, how do we do that? We have the fraction 5/8, and we ask ourselves, in percents, we know that percent is over 100. Anything over 100 is a percent. And so we're looking for this number right here. So we just solve this. We can't divide 8 into 100, so we have to do multiply diagonally, which is 500, and we divide by the other number, the denominator. And then we just divide like normal. 8 goes into 50, let's see, 6 times, which is 48. We subtract, we get a 2, we bring down your 0. 8 goes into 20, 2 times, which is 16. We subtract and we have the remainder 4. We take that 4, we put it over the divisor, 8, and then if we can reduce, which we can, we do. And we have 62 1/2, and then because it's the number up here, it's actually a percent. And there's your answer. So what percent is 62.5%? Make sure you label. So that's the first example. Example 2 is what percent of 350 is 0.28? Again, we solve it by first translating our English into math. What percent is going to be WP? Of is times 350 is equals 0.28. We do the opposite to solve. The opposite to solve is to divide whatever is next to the variable on the same side of the equal sign. If you want to do your wall, you can do your wall if you want to. This crosses out. We're left with WP is equal to, and then we have this lovely fraction here. I'm just going to leave it like it is rather than try to reduce, although you could reduce if you wanted to. But we're just going to leave it like that. Well, remember, we're looking for a percent, and so anything over 100 is percent per 100, and so we're looking for that top number. So we can't divide that into that, so we're just going to go ahead and multiply diagonally. 0.28 times 100 is very easy because we have 2 zeros. We just move that decimal back 2. So when we have it right there, it just goes back. We multiply by 100, powers of 10. So we have 28 is our answer for that when we multiply that. Now we have to divide by the other number, which is 350. I'm just going to take off that 0 just to make life a little bit easier. I'm going to move this decimal back, move it back here, which means adding a 0. And 35 goes into 280 very nicely 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 4 is 28, and it checks out. And so we've already figured out what that is. That is 8. 8 over 100 is 8%, and that is your answer. Example 3 is 75% of what number is 600. Notice that we're given a percent and we're translating what number is missing here. So remember that before we can use a percent, we have to change it into a form that is easy to use. And so we can change it into a decimal or into a fraction. We're going to change that into a fraction. From our fact sheet L, we know that 75% is 3/4. What number? 600. Now to get rid of that 3/4, it's like we do the opposite. We divide by that. But we know that when we divide by fractions, we're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So that will get rid of it on that side. And remember, whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. This crosses out, very lovely. We're left with what number? And then here's our problem. We can cross that out. This becomes a 200 because 3 goes into 200. 3 goes into 600 200 times, and then 200 times 4 is 800. So your what number is 800. You could also, if you wanted to, you could change that into a decimal and do the same thing and divide, but I just find that that is a lot easier to use. Number 4 is 50 is what percent of 40? 50, we translate, is equal, what percent of is 40, of is times, and then we have 40. Notice that the problem is flip-flop, but we still want to get rid of whatever is beside the variable, this part right here, and that is the 40. So we're going to divide by 40, not 50. 50 is by itself. We want to get rid of what's ever there. So if you ever want to know, you can either do a line, you can cover it up, but that is doing the opposite. This crosses out, and then here's our problem. I'm going to go ahead and just reduce it to 5/4, and then we set it up. Remember, we're looking for a percent, so we have 5/4 is equal to whatever over 100. We're looking for that percent because percent is whatever is that over 100. 5 times 100 is 500. We divide by the bottom number. 4 goes into 5 one time. Bring down the 0. 4 goes into 10 2 times, which is 8. Subtract, we get a 2. We bring down the last 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. Comes out evenly. So this is equal to 125%, and that is equal to WP. All right, now we're going to do the lesson practice. And the lesson practice, what you might find that you do is that you work you pause the video and then work the lesson practice first. And then as you go through each problem, either pause the video or work all the lesson practice and then check your work with my work just to make sure that you've done it correctly. So here's the first problem. Here's problem A. 24, I've already translated it for you. 24 equals what percent of 40? And then we solve it the way that we've been doing the other equations. We can cover over the one problem, or we can draw a wall. We need to get rid of whatever is beside the variable, which is the 40. So we're going to divide by 40 on both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. We cross that out. We're left with WP, what percent. And then here's the problem to solve. Notice this is a fraction that we can probably reduce. We know that 8 will go into both 24 and 40. 8 will go into 24 3 times and into 40 5 times. And so 3/5, that's the percent that we're looking for. And so we have to change that into a percentage. Now, if you remember from your fact sheet L, if you have memorized what that is, you know that that is 60%. And if you've memorized that, great, you're done. That's what those fact sheets are for, is for memorization. If you did not memorize that and you need to work it out, that's okay. Maybe you can come back to fact sheet L later and work on that. We set that up to a proportion of 100 because we know that the percent is per 100. And then we just solve it like we've been solving it. You can multiply this diagonally. 3 times 100 is 300. and then we can divide by 5. 5 will go into 360 times, and notice we got the same answer. You could also do it another way, and that is to say 5 times what is 100? 5 times 20. So 3 times 20 also gives you 60. That's the cool thing about math, is that you can get the answer lots of different ways. But the answer for this problem, for problem A, is 60. If you got that, great job. Keep going. Problem B. Problem B is what percent of 6 equals 2? And that's how you should have written out your equation. WP, you want to get rid of the 6 on this side because it's next to the variable. Cross that out. We have WP is equal to 1/3, and you should know that 1/3 is equal to 33 1/3%. Again, you can set that up as 1/3 is equal to blank over 100, because percent is over 100. Multiply diagonally, divide by that, and you will get that answer. Okay, problem C. 15%. Notice that we're missing the what number? You have to change that into a fraction or to a decimal. I'm going to go ahead and change it into a fraction. I'm just leaving it like that. Multiplying by the reciprocal. Whatever you do on one side, you must do on the other. This crosses out. You're left with your what number? And then you just cross cancel. 15 will go into 45 3 times, so 3 times 100 is 300. It's just asking for what number, so you don't have to do any changes. That is the answer. Problem D is what percent of 4 equals 6? You divide by 4, that crosses out, WP equals, and then you can reduce that if you wanted to. That makes it really easy. 3/2, and that is equal to 1 1/2, which is equal to 150%, if you wanted to go the easy route. If you did not know what that was, you could put 3/2, setting it up to a proportion to 100, because you know that percent is to 100. Multiply diagonally, 3 times 100, 300, divide by 2, and you'll get the same answer, 150%. Problem E, 24 is equal to 120% of what number? We're looking for that again. Remember that you need to change your percent into something that you can use. I'm going to change it into a decimal, 1.2. So 24 equals 1.2 times WN. I've got to get rid of the 1.2, so I'm going to divide by 1.2 on each side. That crosses off. I need to divide 1.2 into 12. Excuse me, 1.2 into 24. Decimal goes over, add a 0. 12 goes into 24 2 times, which is 24. And then we have a 0 here, and that is 20. So the answer is just 20. What number is 20? Okay, we're working on F. It says to rework example 5. Actually, we didn't do example 5 before, but we're going to rework that one using 150 as a fraction instead of a decimal. As you see in the problem, it shows it as a decimal. But we're going to work it as a fraction. All right, so we're working this as a fraction for F, and it's 60 is equal to 150% is 3/2 as a fraction. If you're not sure of that, you put 150 over 100, and then we reduce it. We can take off that, and then we divide by 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times, into that 2 times. So that's how we get that fraction. So again, remember how we're working with when we work with fractions in an equation. To get rid of it, we have to divide by that. Well, remember that dividing by this number is actually the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of this is 2/3. And we multiply that on both sides. That crosses out, very lovely. We're left with WN is equal to, and then here's our problem. That is 2/3. I know it's a little sloppy, sorry about that. This is a 1, this is a 20. 2 times 20 is 40. and we get the same answer as you see in example 5. So notice that if you change your percent to a fraction or into a decimal, it should come out to be the same thing as long as you're doing all your math correctly. Okay, our last lesson practice. Hopefully you're doing really well and you're finding this is easy. Let's do this last one, and then you can work on your mixed practice. So we divide by 5 here, cross that out. WP is equal to, and then we divide that into that. Bottom number into top. Oops, you know what I forgot to do? I'm so sorry. I forgot to set it up to, I mean, you can do that, but remember, we're working with percents. So we want to set that up to 100. And then we multiply this diagonally. Remember that trick I showed you before? When you're multiplying by powers of 10, you have 2 zeros here. We just moved the decimal from where it was 2 times to the right. And so we just got a nice, lovely 35. So now our problem is 5 into 35. We divide by that, okay? Whoops. Five into 35. So we multiply this diagonally, we get 35, we divide by the other number, and we know that comes out to be 7. And that's the number that would be up here. That is a percent, and that is our answer, 7%. All right, hopefully you did well, and if you have any questions, make sure you email me. Hope you and have a great day. Love you guys. Miss you. Bye.